What is up, everyone? Welcome into the Fight HQ preview for UFC Vegas 71, which, of course, goes down here on Saturday night. Of course, it was Saturday night in Las Vegas. First time we've been in the Apex in a while. Heavyweight main event in this one. Pete, how you doing, bro? Hey, Pete, you're there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, yeah, you were muted there for a second, so I was like, I saw your lips moving, so I was like, he's definitely talking. He's definitely talking.
Well, all I said was, "What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us. Happy to be at the Apex, and I like the Apex personally. It just provides a different element. The Apex definitely served its purpose, but now we're starting to see the UFC branch out to other venues. But yeah, I'm excited. It's a smaller cage, and we have a big heavyweight wrestler in Curtis Blaydes. So I'm interested to see your take on some of these fights, and definitely our community's take as well.
Yeah, I was just, I know we were muted there for a second, so hopefully everyone can hear us now.
Yeah,
I had to pull up stream and just make sure I'm hearing you. I was like, okay, all right, we are definitely we are there.
It's all good, brother. It's all good. It's been a long week for both of us, so happy to be able to finagle this show and get on here and still break it down for you guys. And, you know, if you're not a part of the Discord, make sure you guys join the Discord. It's in our profile. You know, that's where you can ask us questions throughout the week and especially on fight day.
Yeah, of course. I will be out of town this week, and this is why we're actually doing the show here on a Thursday. So appreciate Pete. I know life is a lot more crazy for Pete than it is for me. I definitely know that is the case. Of course, so we will have a DraftKings contest. I'll create that contest here later on today. Congratulations to Texas ADVO 1991 taking down the contest. I believe this is this person's won the contest now a couple of times in a row. Last week, my cash score lineup absolutely sucked.
Yeah, congratulations if you had one winning fighter a part of your optimal lineup. Yeah, it was a weird week, right? Like super volatile, hit some bold calls. So the bold calls definitely, you know, paid off for me, which was fantastic. Pedro Munoz basically bailed me out of some poor exposure on certain fighters. Ian Cutelaba really screwed me over as far as just kind of fading him. But all in all, it was a successful week, especially for the community members.
Yeah, of course. Be sure to join that Discord channel over there. Totally free to join. Great conversation that we have in there. But Pete, let's get right into this fight card. We got a heavyweight main event here. Curtis Blaydes taking on Sergei Pavlovich. Curtis Blaydes is a minus 175 betting favorite, plus 150 for Sergei Pavlovich. As we do this show, or at least when I looked a little while ago, FanDuel would not put the salaries out, but of course DK salaries are out. Curtis Blaydes 8,800, 7,400 for Sergei Pavlovich. And you know, I think just looking at this from a salary aspect, Pete, it's just going to be hard to avoid. I think either one of these guys, we know Curtis Blaydes is one of the elite of this division. Now, he just hasn't been able to get into that top three of this division, but we know what he can do with his wrestling. But man, we know the power Sergei Pavlovich has. And at 7,400, how can you not have a decent amount of both of these guys?
Yeah, for DFS, I think this fight is unavoidable personally. 5-round nature surrounding a heavyweight wrestler is pretty unheard of. So we have Curtis Blaydes sitting there at 8,800. Expensive price tag, but not really, you know, when you take his ceiling into consideration. On the flip side, we have a very cheap Sergei Pavlovich who can totally put out Curtis Blaydes' lights, has fast hands, good power, relatively untested in the wrestling department heading into this crazy step up in competition against Curtis Blaydes, right? You go back and you look at his tail of the tape, you see Tai Tuivasa, striker. Derek Lewis, striker. Shamil Durahimov, punching bag. Maurice Green, not really sure. A little bit of a striker, a little bit of a jiu-jitsu guy. Marcelo Gomes, striker. Alistair Overeem, when Alistair Overeem hits you with an outside trip, he's a very well-rounded mixed martial artist, but you know, the ground and pound really was the difference maker in that matchup. And I do think a fighter in Curtis Blaydes, who has ever improving striking, could land a takedown, resulting in tons of control time. What happens if Sergei Pavlovich is outside of round one? Haven't really seen him taxed in the cardio department. Does he respond well? Does he not? I don't really want to plant my flag on a fighter that I have so many question marks surrounding. He may have good takedown defense now in here 2023. I know he's at American Top Team, or mixing in some training at American Top Team heading into this fight against Curtis Blaydes out of Team Elevation. But I have to still side with Curtis Blaydes here, given the ceiling, given the takedown nature, given the fact that he's 12-3-1 in the UFC, and we have Sergei Pavlovich 5-1, relatively untested in the most important aspect in mixed martial arts in the wrestling department. And I do think that the clinch game against the cage could just wear on Pavlovich, and then in round two, you see the steam kind of, getting taken out of his punches, and the power, the zip, everything's gone, and he's still dangerous. But I think that we could see Curtis Blaydes break the slate. But with all that being said, 7,400 Sergei Pavlovich going to be one of the most prioritized underdogs on the slate, given the volatility of Curtis Blaydes' chin. If you crack him with a good combination, good shot, we've seen him knocked out time and time again. Yes, it's kind of weird because sometimes he can absorb those strikes. We've seen him absorb strikes against Jairzinho Rosenstruck, pick up wins over Chris Dawkins, my boy Tom Aspinall due to injury. But all in all, I still have to side with Curtis Blaydes here at 8,800, and I don't think I'll have a lineup without one of these fighters and a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I might be 50% on this fight, maybe not 50, maybe I go like 40 to 45% on each fighter, just because of, I think it's going to be hard that this fight doesn't end up optimal. I mean, as one of the people Joe mentioned in the chat saying, hopefully Blaydes goes to Takedown City here. I mean, that's not his clear path. I will tell you this. I did get a laugh when I was looking at the prop bets here. Curtis Blaydes should be well north of plus 900 to win by submission, because I don't know if he knows how to do submissions.
It's crazy because he has good training partners surrounding him and coaching staff that can implement it. Maybe this is the time he finally does it, right? Maybe, but how many times have we really seen opportunities present itself and he just chooses not to? And I think the one thing you can point to and pick apart of Curtis Blaydes' game is he took down Volkov for so much for that 25 minutes of fighting. And he had 19 minutes and 52 seconds of control time and was unable to finish Volkov, who we've seen be susceptible on the mat in the ground and pound and also submission department. Went 14 of 25 in the takedown department in that matchup. So if he doesn't finish Pavlovich, this is the typical volatility surrounding heavyweight, where Pavlovich maybe stands up or maybe gets fresh, in between rounds, and it just lands a shot and it's over. So I'm still picking the better minute winner, Curtis Blaydes.
Yeah, if you remember that fight where Blaydes was just gassed after those 4 rounds because working so hard. I mean, there's just been times where you watch him fight and it's like, man, the neck is there, man. Just take it. How many times I have conversations with fighters and talk about it, hey, you have a game plan, but something just presents itself and you take advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at his entire body of work in the UFC. He has 0 submissions attempted. 0 submissions
crazy.
attempted in UFC. So he has 16 UFC fights, and there's a ton of control time and top position. The ground and pound that he put on Alistair Overeem, those elbows from guard were absolutely vicious. And I actually think that we could see a ground and pound finish here for Curtis Blaydes. I think it's the most common path to victory for Curtis Blaydes.
No doubt about it. Now, your co-main event, of course, it was initially supposed to be Ricky Simon and Song Yudong. That fight got moved to the main event of next week's card when the Saruki and Moncano fight got scratched due to Moncano pulling out due to injury. So our new co-main event is Brad Tavares taking on Bruno Silva. Brad Tavares, a minus 165 betting favorite, plus 140 for Bruno Silva. Brad Tavares, 8,900 on DK, 7,300 for Bruno Silva. And this is when I initially started looking at the salaries yesterday, there were salaries I looked at, I was like, oh my God. A $9,700 Montel Jackson. We'll talk about that matchup later of what kind of concerns me about that price point. Looking at a $9,400 Bobby Green. I can see how he can be optimal, but a big price tag. And I looked at this price tag on Brad Tavares, and I mean, let's just, we just have to look at the reality, Pete. Brad Tavares is a guy that majority of the time is going to go 15 minutes.
Yeah, Tavares is not a finisher by any means. He's an excellent fighter. He is so well-rounded. He's so skilled. You watch him hit pads. You watch him train. You're like, damn, this guy's good. Looks like championship material. In the octagon, he just does not find find finishes. He really doesn't. He can wrestle. He has solid takedown defense. Um, he can knock several people down, as he has done in the past. Omari Akhmedov picked up a finish over Christoph Jocko, knocked down Talis Laitis. But like a lot of these fighters we're talking about aren't in the UFC anymore, or they aren't atop of the sport anymore. So I do think that Father Time is undefeated. The miles of Brad Tavares, I think they could actually be catching up to him a little bit, and we have seen him look solid, but nothing spectacular. I actually thought he was going to get finished against Dricus du Plessis, but he didn't. 14-7 in the UFC, 8,900 price tag, complete contrarian play. I think the ownership is reflective of that, and if you go to him, it's just a pivot off of some of these high-owned fighters that could possibly underperform. I'm expecting Brad Tavares to, be winning the fight until Bruno Silva hits him with some big
Hmm.
combination. We did see Bruno Silva go back and forth with Alex Pereira. I will say that Bruno Silva's most recent performance against Gerald Mearshart is not the Bruno Silva I expected in the UFC. I don't know if it was a poor weight cut, sickness, not being there mentally, dealing with a southpaw, whatever it was. Gerald Mearshart's like threat of taking him down and subbing him, and the fact that he's improved so much striking, I think it threw off Bruno Silva. And I'm just gonna kind of forget about that fight, hopefully. And I'm gonna think that Bruno Silva is gonna be one of my favorite underdogs here at 7,300. I just think I'm in love with the price tag. I really am. He keeps his chin up there. He can easily get knocked out, but we did see him go to war against Alex Pereira, and I think that he's going to land some big shots and win this fight against Brad Tavares at 7,300.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just more about a price tag thing when it comes to Brad Tavares. I mean, I understand why he is the favorite here, but I think it's just when I'm thinking about GPPs and, when I'm looking at this from, say, 8,700 and above. He's just one of those guys I just don't feel like I'm going to get to it, and kind of the ownership projections right now is reflecting that. Next up, we got Bobby Green taking on Jared Gordon. Bobby Green, 9,400 on DK, 6,800 for Jared Gordon. Bobby Green is a minus 260 betting favorite, plus 210 for Jared Gordon. And we'll let everyone know that me and Pete were kind of talking about this fight before the show started. And, talk about the price tag of Bobby Green. And one of my thoughts with Bobby Green is, I mean, like, look, I think Bobby Green should win this fight. But it's
Yep.
like, what is the path to being optimal? I kind of feel like his path to being optimal is just, lighting up Jared Gordon for 3 rounds and getting a late finish.
Yeah, I mean, the price point at 9,400, he has to do something besides, just win a typical Bobby Green fashion fight. Even 100 points flat or 105, I don't think does it enough. It's all reflective of the slate and depending on the other fights and their performances. But I just personally don't think 105, would do enough at 9,400 for Bobby Green. Now, this is a complete salary play for Jared Gordon, and I like Jared Gordon. He's, a friend of mine and former roommate of mine when we trained out in New Mexico. So I'm going to be rooting for Jared Gordon like crazy, and I don't think it's the craziest thing to think he wins a decision here. He makes all of his fights are extremely competitive. He is hittable on the feet. He has improved that since he's been at Sanford MMA and Killcliff FC now. His striking has developed. His pace, his volume is always up there. And you take all that into consideration with a guy in Bobby Green who plays with his food, we could see one of these 6,000 fighters in Jared Gordon pull off this upset. So I don't think it's the craziest thing. Also, Bobby Green is coming off of back-to-back TKO finishes. The Islam Makhachev TKO finish, the Drew Dober actual knockout. He keeps his hands down in the media. He says nothing's going to change with his fighting style, which is like, I don't know. As a coach, it's just like you should be making some adjustments, especially when you make significant mistakes like that. But his fighting style has made him who he is. Everybody likes to watch him. His hands being low creates funky angles for his punches to come from. So they come from unorthodox angles, and it's tough to pick up on. So hands from the hips is a great starting point for defending takedowns because your arms are right there for underhooks. In addition to that, your straight shots come at, an upward trajectory. So it's hard to pick up on and hard to see. I really do see the straight punches being a problem for Jared Gordon for some of the fight, but I really think Jared's very good at pressing people against the cage, pressuring them to begin with, getting them on the back foot, getting them in the space that he's most comfortable with. So like as when I take salaries into consideration, Bobby Green not really known for his finishing ability either. He can wrestle, so I don't think like Jared Gordon's going to have a significant advantage in the wrestling department. But I think it could come down to volume and effectiveness. And you don't want to be with a 9,400 fighter in a close fight or one that could arguably go against him. So for salary's sake, I'll be going with Jared Gordon. For, just rooting sake, I'll be going for my boy Jared Gordon. I think it's a winnable matchup, and he's due for a finish. I just don't know if it's against the guy in Bobby Green, who hasn't really been finished by many people in his entire career, except as of late. So we'll see. But I think Jared Gordon is going to be one of the most popular underdogs given the playing with food nature that Bobby Green possesses.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things that if you're in a place where you can place a wager, I would just look at Jared Gordon via split decision.
Yeah, right. I mean, you already know Bobby Green fight split decision. So
yeah,
it's nice to sprinkle both sides of that, because for whatever, and that's exactly what I'm saying. He's going to be popular at 6,800 is just because of, look at his past, like split decisions everywhere. You know what I mean? And I don't know, man. It's a close fight, especially in 2023.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But to me, it's just that it comes down to a roster construction, and I could see, and I don't know what my cash score is as we currently do this show, but I could see a place where I could put Bobby Green in that just because of thinking he just lights up Jared Gordon, and it's 100 plus significant strikes, maybe throws in a couple of takedowns, maybe gets that late finish. Next up, we got a female matchup. You got Lucindo taking on Walker. Lucindo is a minus 340 betting favorite, plus 274. Walker 9,500 and 6,700 over there on the DraftKings side of the equation. We got another high end price tag here, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like these high end price tags. I don't know what the heck's going on with DraftKings salaries lately, but they last week made everybody hesitant of putting Zach Cummings in their lineup, and damn, that was a performance, especially one to go out on. Tons of knockdowns, tons of just damaging strikes, and result to a late finish. And that's where paying up for the free square on the slate can actually pay off. And I don't think Iasmin Lucindo is that. It's clearly Montel Jackson this week, if you want to kind of look at it on paper. But the potential that Lucindo has within the flyweight division, I think, is pretty significant. She went, tit for tat against Yasmin Jauregui in her debut, who's actually a very, very talented fighter, I think, and a name that's going to be cracking into rankings in the next couple of years. She's known as a solid striker, but leaned on the takedowns or takedown attempts a little bit. Attempted 2 of them in the previous matchup, threw 181 significant strikes. Pretty low accuracy, landed only 66, lost a unanimous decision. So now she's priced at 9,500. This could be a buy low spot for her opponent in Brogan Walker, but be very careful here, because she did lose to Juliana Miller, who won the Ultimate Fighter over her, but Juliana Miller just completely underperformed in her most recent fight and looked horrible. So it's like, wow, that loss didn't really. You'd like to see Juliana Miller go out there and pick up a pretty decisive victory, when you lose to somebody like that. And now it's a return fight for Brogan Walker. We got to see what she's capable of. She's talking about how she's feeling better than ever, typical media stuff. She threw 48 significant strikes, landed 30, was taken down, was put on her back, was ground and pounded into oblivion. It's women's MMA, right? Like, there's no way I'm going to uncheck the underdog in Brogan Walker. Similar to how we shouldn't have unchecked, I forget what's her name was last week, but she absolutely hit her with a big, big punch en route to ground and pound. So, Brogan Walker, 6,700. It's a salary play, but I really think Lucindo's talented. I hate the price tag. I probably won't get to it much, but it's a Lucindo win for me.
I always talk about every week here on the show of these 9,000 options that have low ownership. And that is something I'm going to pay attention to with Lucindo as the week goes on. If we're talking underneath 20% ownership with her, under 15% ownership with her, that's someone in GPPs I'm going to want to target a little bit more just to get leverage on the field. And that's where, you can use ownership projections to your advantage of finding some of these fighters that, just you believe are not getting enough ownership. There are certain fighters. I really don't want to get a Brogan Walker in this matchup, but to me, this would be more of an ownership play there. Now, one of the questions we always get is favorite fights inside the distance. And there's three fights I really have this week. We already talked about one of them being the main event. Another one of those matchups to me is Jeremiah Wells and Matthew Semelsberger. This is a straight up pick 'em fight, -110 on the betting odds, but a little bit different story over on the DraftKings salaries. 8,400 for Jeremiah Wells, 7,800 for Matthew Semelsberger. And this is one of the ones I think, Pete, we have to target just because I think this fight's over within 10 minutes.
I think that it's pretty clear early on who it favors, and it favors Jeremiah Wells. He's just a finishing monster. Trains out of Renzo Gracie, Philly. You already know my connection with that team and how I always root for those guys, and they're so talented. Second round finish against Warley Alves in his debut. Pretty tough debut. First round finish over Blood Diamond. Should have never been in the octagon. And a first round finish over Court McGee, who has been hittable but pretty durable, with all that being said. And, you look at that and you see a guy who's so dangerous early on, but also relatively untested after that 10-minute mark. And I want to see how he looks against a guy who has picked up some pretty notable wins. Like, Semelsberger is one of those fighters that has completely surprised me. He really has. He throws a piston right hand down the middle. If you throw a lazy leg kick, he's going to knock you right out. If you can't wrestle, he can wrestle. So picking up a decision win over Carlton minus, that beautiful right hand down the middle against Jason Witt. Took damaging strikes from Chaos Williams, but ultimately lost that fight. Martin Sano destroyed him. AJ Fletcher win is really, really significant for me because I'm pretty high on AJ Fletcher. Alex Morono, massive step up in competition. Still looked good. Still scored 51 in that performance. But most recently, the biggest win of his career is clearly against Jake Matthews, scoring 102 fantasy points. And he went to the takedown well. He picked up 3 of 5 takedowns. And Jake Matthews is a fantastic grappler, in addition to 3 knockdowns. So there's some dynamite in the hands of Semelsberger. And I think he's going to be the most popular underdog on the slate, next to Sergei Pavlovich, and for good reason. I'm going to be siding with Semelsberger here, despite my love for Renzo Gracie Philly. I just think that Semelsberger, 5-2 in the UFC, more minutes in the octagon, he's tested in more areas than Jeremiah Wells, who has found the finishing blow in all of his fights in the UFC. But it's a fight that I'm going to have a ton of exposure to Jeremiah Wells, but you need an underdog to come through, and I think a ton of people are going to be on Semelsberger for good reason, and a lot of the fight film and everything, and it's all going to point towards a Matthew Semelsberger upset. So give me Semelsberger here to pull off the upset.
And Semelsberger is one of those guys that I was completely wrong about. I mean, I did not see this coming in. That Jake Matthews performance was just unbelievable with what he did out there. I think he just has to survive kind of that 5 minutes of fury he's going to get for Jeremiah Wells. But I think if he can survive that, get this one in the second round, I think he wears down Wells and gets a stoppage victory. Next up, we got Ricky Glenn taking on Christos Giagos. Ricky Glenn, a -165 favorite, +140 for Christos Giagos. And then Ricky Glenn, 9,000 on DK. Giagos, 7,200. And, this is one of these fights that me and Pete were talking about right before the show. And the one thing that always scares you about Christos Giagos is you love the first round potential of maybe getting a stoppage, but what scares the living hell out of you is if this thing gets to the third round, and will that gas tank be there?
Yeah, I really like this matchup. But I wonder the ceiling about it. Like, I love it from a fan standpoint. I'm always rooting for Christos Giagos. I have no idea why. He's 5-6 in the UFC, but I root for a ton of fighters out of Killcliff FC and Sanford MMA, and his development is, from everything I'm seeing in the training, footage and everything. Christos Giagos looks like he's in a tough room. Killcliff FC is a very, very tough room, and You're going to be in good wrestling shape, which is great for him, for his prospect. You're going to be in good striking shape and have good defensive and offensive skills because of Henry Hooft. I think that Christos Giagos is an excellent underdog this week. Round one, I would love to see what the odds for round one of Christos to win round one, because I think it's pretty high that he wins round one. Round two is where things can start getting interesting. It all comes down to his cardio and will he have another cardio collapse? And he is somewhat of a liability in that department. If he wins round two, I really think that he can pull off the upset here, but we already know he's going to lose round three. Like Ricky Glenn's going to come back, come from behind, and that's why I just look at the numbers here and the salaries, and I just say it's a little too wide, in my opinion. I know the volatility surrounding Christos Giagos, but I'm going to side with Christos Giagos to actually pull off the upset here over Ricky Glenn. Um, but as far as like ceiling, I don't think Ricky Glenn has a high ceiling. Christos could just be completely gassed and get finished. He was finished in round one against Arman Sarukian and round one against Thiago Moises. So like, why is he so um, why am I favoring him so much in round one? I just think it's a skill standpoint and also just the pace standpoint. He sets such a high pace in round one that he has fallen, you know, to defeat against some of these higher skilled fighters like Sarukian and Thiago Moises. You can't really fault him for those, but against that Ricky Glenn type of level fighter, I think that he's going to have a ton of success in round one. So give me Christos Giagos to win a decision here over Ricky Glenn, and not a priority fight for me by any means. I think it could be like a 70-point win, but at that salary, I think it's enough to sneak into a ton of my lineups.
And you mentioned about that round one, Christos Giagos seeing anywhere from plus 750 to plus 900 to him win in round one. By the way, just to throw out the Ricky Glenn wins in round three on the low end, plus 750, the high end, plus 1400.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be sprinkling that. You guys already know, like, in addition to playing daily fantasy sports, there's money to be, if you can wager on sports betting, there's money to be made in MMA, and live betting it. You see, you're watching the fight and you see these live odds. You're like, I do not agree with that at all. Trust your gut, throw some money down on them, and also kind of, you know, forecast how you predict the fight going. And a round three, Ricky Glenn, like that's the odds on that are just completely crazy.
Then, of course, our biggest favorite of the night is Montel Jackson. He's a minus 600 betting favorite, taking on Yahya plus 430. 9,700 on DK, 6,500 for Yahya. And, I mean, look, we know about the size that Montel Jackson has. I mean, look, you can look at what he can do wrestling-wise, but this is one of those fights, Pete, of his corner. The game plan has to be, Montel, use your reach to your advantage, keep this thing on the feet, and try and knock him out on the feet. Do not take this one to the ground.
Yeah, 100%. If he engages in any clinch or any grappling situations with Yahya, you're playing with fire right there. And we have a massive favorite in Montel Jackson, who's actually favored to win by KO TKO at minus 150. And I think that's fair, right? Like we've seen what he can do when he puts hands on you. He's a knockdown machine. He hits people, they fall down. One knockdown against Julio Arce, 4 against JP Base, 2 against Jesse Strader, 1 against Brett Johns, and 1 against Felipe Colares. He has massive hands for the division. So when he hits you with those hands on the feet, people go down. And his wrestling is good. He's a good wrestler, but for whatever reason, his wrestling defense isn't as he's not as skilled in that department as he is offensively. And I don't know if it's like conserving energy or just not panicking, but he gets put in bad positions. And I'll tell you what, massive red flag when I see a 9,700 fighter in 10, 20 submission attempts from JP Bays. And we're talking deep submissions, like deep submissions, deep guillotines, different types of chokes. I personally think that, one time you get caught in it, okay, You get caught in it multiple times in the same fight, in the same round, or round after round. Clearly, there's some fight IQ mistakes going on, especially in that jiu-jitsu department. And that's where a guy in Yahya can absolutely capitalize. 13-3-2 in the UFC. This guy's been around forever. I'm a massive Yahya fan. I have been ever since he was in the WEC. So I love Yahya. I love his jiu-jitsu. I love his skills. It's pretty clear if you can sprawl on him, not allow him to even pull guard on you and just feel comfortable in a jiu-jitsu type of scenario, you can sprawl and brawl like a Chuck Liddell type of finish against him, where you just punish him on the feet, sprawl, back up, let him up. Don't even stay in his guard because he's so damn tricky. He'll go after arms, necks, legs. He'll go after everything with some of the best chain submission grappling we've seen in the UFC. So beware of a 9,700 Montel Jackson. This should be an easy win in 2023 for him if he is what we think he is. And I do think he's a pretty big prospect within the division. But all these red flags in the grappling situations that I saw makes me look at the exposure and see what the ownership level of Yahya is. And I'll tell you what, I'm probably like 5 timesing the exposure and ownership of what everybody's doing on Yahya. I think that there's massive submission upside here, just given the defensive flaws I've seen in Montel Jackson's fights. So yeah, Yahya could break the slate pretty easily here, but so can Montel Jackson. So I'm going to still pick Montel Jackson in the fight. But as far as like nobody getting to Yahya, I'll tell you what, I think that's a mistake.
No, I'm with you. I mean, that's when I looked at the ownership projection, that's something that stuck out to me. And this is where if you're Montel Jackson, you got to use that 8-inch reach advantage in this matchup and just keep this thing at range and work your way there. Next up, we got a female 145-pound matchup as Karol Rosa moves up to 145, taking on Norma Dumont. Dumont minus 115, minus 105 for Karol Rosa. Dumont 8,300 DK, 7,900 over there on Rosa. I mean, Norma Dumont, I don't think she could physically make 135. And so that's why you kind of see her matchups in 145 pounds. But I don't I'm seeing what the ownership projections on Karol Rosa are.
It's crazy.
Don't want to get there.
Yeah, I think the reason people are getting to Karol Rosa is just because of the volume and the takedowns, right? Like massive ownership going to Karol Rosa. It's women's MMA. A ton of people want to go with the fighter who throws a lot, has a high work rate, and has a path to victory against Norma Dumont. We've seen Dumont get taken down and lose before. We've seen her get knocked out in the past. But I will tell you that I think this fighter is kind of, flying under the radar. Norma Dumont's pretty damn talented. When she beat Aspen Ladd was like atop of everybody's list within a division. Just given her weight cutting issues and just kind of just like she was very inconsistent, but people still had Aspen Ladd a part of that, top end of the division. And I really do think that the previous performance against Danielle Wolf was a solid one. I would have thought she would have got the finish in that one. Landed 2 of 2 takedowns in that fight, got a knockdown. Her striking's pretty damn solid. She's very strong. I think her grappling's ever improving, especially her takedown defense. Karol Rosa is the same fighter that against Jocelyn Edwards, she landed a ton of takedowns, landed 4 of 6, but she was hit a lot in that matchup, and she was hurt a lot in that matchup. And, Jocelyn Edwards is solid. I don't think she should have won that fight last weekend or the weekend before. I really don't think that she won against Pudilova. But, needless to say, I think Jocelyn can at least make things interesting on the feet. But if Jocelyn Edwards is having success, I really think that Norma Dumont's going to have a ton of success on the feet too. And I'm going to go away from the public here, and I'm going to be picking Norma Dumont. I think that Dumont wins a decision here. Not really my favorite fight from a DFS perspective, and I can see if people are like, well, if I'm getting to anything in this fight, at least I'm going to get to something that's going to allow me some roster flexibility and get to the high-priced options, and that's why Karol Rosa's making it into a ton of lineups, and that's why Jared Gordon is too. But as far as fight film and everything, I'm going to be siding with Norma Dumont. I think she picks up another victory here.
Just pulled up the odds on this one just to see what the over 2.5 rounds is.
Minus 300.
No, higher, minus
Oh, Lord.
420.
Yeah. I mean, be careful with this fight. I'm probably going to skip it in some of mine, but every now and then we see everybody get away from these highly inflated fights to go the distance, and it's just like, of course, nobody's on it, and a weird stoppage happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're from a betting side, if I was going to attack anything, I'd probably be looking at taking either one of these fighters to win via decision. Hossa
Yeah.
plus 170, Dumont plus 135. I mean, I think that's where, from a DFS aspect, really do not want to go there. Now, a fight that I don't feel comfortable getting to, but I think is a fight that we have to get to in DFS this week. That's this heavyweight matchup between Junior Tafa and Mohammed Usman, minus 110 on each side. Junior Tafa, 8,200, 8,000 for Mohammed Usman. Look, there was a time where I liked the athletic ability I saw early on in Mohammed Usman's MMA career, but I've been down on this guy. This is one of those ones where I'm gonna be well over the field in terms of what we're seeing in ownership projection here. I'll have more Junior Tafa than I'll have Mohammed Usman, but to me, this is one of those fights when you talk about inside the distance. I don't think this thing's going 15 minutes.
Yeah, I think the price point makes this pretty difficult to, pivot away from, especially given the nature of Junior Tafa and the volatility that everybody sees on fight film with Mohammed Usman. He is not his brother Kamaru Usman at all. Doesn't rely on the takedowns as much as Kamaru Usman has. He can pick up takedowns. He attempted one in his Ultimate Fighter finale against Zach Pauga, was unsuccessful in that one. Granted, I picked Zach Pauga there. I thought that it was an extremely winnable matchup. Trains with great training partners. Going up against a guy who makes a ton of mistakes on the feet. I thought Pauga was going to pick him apart en route to a KO or TKO finish. I was wrong. Mohammed Usman threw 40 significant strikes, probably 20 windmills, closed eye strikes, landed only 12, but one of those was enough to land a knockdown and a hammer fist follow-up for a knockout victory in round 2. Mohammed Usman's a big guy. And, in this division, all of these guys are live to knock each other out. It doesn't take the more skilled fighter to win all the times. And that's what makes MMA DFS pretty frustrating at times, because you can, do all the research, check out all the fight film, but you have so many factors. You got judges, injuries, so many to even, too many to name. But I think there's a ton of holes within Mohammed Usman's game that we're all waiting to rear its ugly head. And this could be the matchup, man. Junior Tafa, I think, is better than Justin Tafa. I do.
Yes.
I think Junior Tafa is damn good. I think he's damn good. He's an excellent striker, boxing pedigree, kickboxing pedigree. Picked up some MMA fights, was signed to the Contender Series before he even had an MMA fight. So he's relatively new to MMA. And if I'm Mohammed Usman, I'm lacing up my wrestling shoes and I'm putting him on his back or attempting to do so. I think that Junior Tafa's range, his striking skills and everything are just going to be too much. He goes to the body. He's going to, if this fight stays on the feet, I think he knocks out Mohammed Usman. I really do. And I made this mistake in the past where Juliana Miller, who was the Ultimate Fighter winner, I picked her again, and I kind of used, fight film and everything I saw on tape. And then the extra factor was, well, she just won the Ultimate Fighter. I don't think she's going to win to this fighter, this random fighter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to make that same mistake here. I think Mohammed Usman's going to lose, and I think Junior Tafa is going to knock him out. So I'm going to be a little bit aggressive on Junior Tafa, but this is a volatile division.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things of, if Usman's going to take this one down, I think going to takedown route, and someone mentioned that in the comments, I think that's the way to go here. But just looking, I'm actually surprised the ownership projections are not higher than what they currently are, just because of, I feel like this is going to be one of those weeks where I really utilize groups a lot. And really utilizing a group of these two heavyweight matchups of this one and the main event of, putting a combination of the two of those guys together. Next up, we got a matchup that I already know Pete is already, he's got a little bit of a good feel on this one. Francis Marshall, William Gomis, Marshall minus 210 betting favorite, plus 175 for Gomes, 9,200 for Marshall and 7,000 for William. Pete, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't whiff a lot on these, flag plants. Whiffed pretty bad on the Steven Peterson one. That was like the historically worst one ever. But I really think that Francis Marshall is a legitimate, not contender, but a name to circle within this division. I don't think that his best game is striking. I see a chin up in the air. I see powerful punches. He throws everything at 100%. I think that we're going to see the other parts of his game in this matchup against William Gomis, and I think it's important because Gomis is frustrating on the feet, pretty technical and kind of slick. So I think the range of Gomis and just his evasiveness is going to make Francis Marshall have to, pivot to something else within this matchup. And he is a fantastic wrestler with good jiu-jitsu, but excellent ground and pound and mat return capability as well. So I think Francis Marshall is going to break the slate this week. I'm pretty bullish on it. And I'm going to get to a significant amount of him. I just saw so many mistakes on the mat that William Gomis was, making. Outside the UFC, he has picked up a very nice guillotine choke win. So if Francis Marshall is going the takedown route, he needs to be wise, leaving his neck out there. I think that Francis Marshall can win this in multiple ways, and I can't really say the same about William Gomis. Picking up a decision win against Jarno Aarons doesn't really impress me much. Threw 70 significant strikes, landed 32, went 3 of 5 in the takedown department, defended 2 takedowns himself, and had 8 minutes of control time. But tons of mistakes in the submission department, getting put in bad positions, nearly submitted. I think Francis Marshall, he might take him to takedown city. And this could be a 15-minute decision, but I think it could be a ton of accumulation of everything: strikes, submission attempts. Could be a late finish too, but give me Francis Marshall here at 9,200. Keep that chin down, kid, and I think you pick up another win.
Two more fights here to break down here before we get out here on this episode of Fight HQ's preview. Of course, be sure to smash that thumbs up button if you're watching us on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get over 1,000 subscribers here. And of course, you can check the show out on the podcast platforms as well, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, if you want to listen to it from the audio side. Of course, rate, review, that really does help us out. Of course, be sure to get in our Discord channel, totally free to join. A great conversation we have in there each and every week about everything going on in the world of MMA. Talk about various picks, plays. Pizza been nailing these PFL picks. I'm sure he'll have some Bellator picks coming. But there is a Bellator card, 2 Bellator cards this weekend. Yeah, there is a couple of ones I think that are interesting lines over there, and I'm trying to. I
haven't even looked at it. I'm pulling it up right now.
I think it's on the Friday card. There was a line that I saw that stuck out to me. I'm just pulling this up here.
Horiguchi's only minus 250 against Ray Borg.
That's one.
Yeah.
Why can I not find Bellator 294 on Best Fight Odds? It was a Sarah McMahon fight was the one that stuck out to me. So
yeah, I don't know what. Yeah, but it's crazy, man. I can't find that either. But I'm seeing the other card for them on the 22nd, so it's Saturday. So
yeah, you got two cards there. I really do love that Stotts and mixed fight. I think that's a great matchup there. But of course we got 2 more matchups here on the UFC card. You got Silva taking on Cachoeira, a plus 165 betting underdog, minus 200 for Silva. She is 9,100 on DK. Cachoeira is 7,100, and Cachoeira is one of these underdogs, Pete, that's got my eye this week.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all, and it's women's MMA, so you can't. For me personally, I can't plant the flag on a lot of fighters. There's few that I will, like Blanchfield planted a flag on her. I think that's 1 in a million. But Priscila Cachoeira and Karine Silva, I think it's a close fight, right? There's more volatility surrounding Priscila Cachoeira, who keeps her hands completely low. You know that she's susceptible to submission defeats as well. Her grappling skills aren't up to par. We have Karine Silva, who, looked good in her debut against Poliana Botelho. Solid Muay Thai striker. Hit her with a big overhand en route to a beautiful Darce choke. So on the Contender Series, she picked up a guillotine. She has great head and arm chokes, which I really like. So she goes from either a guillotine or a Darce choke. She can go to an anaconda as well. Her grappling skills, I think, are what could be the difference maker in this matchup. It's the cardio that I think is interesting. They credited her with 1 takedown in that fight against Poliana Botelho, but it was kind of, bang bang where she landed that overhand. Botelho looked like she was going down anyways. The grappling's interesting here, but Priscila Cachoeira is having another camp at MMA Masters, and I do think a coach in Daniel Valverde is significant in improving your grappling skills, and I do think that the more time Priscila Cachoeira gets on the mat and rounds out that part of her game, the more dangerous she is. Like, she's on a 2-fight win streak against Ji Yeon Kim and picked up a very quick win over Ariane Lipski. When she knows she hurts you, she's like a shark who smells blood in the water. And I think just like the pressure and the heavy strikes kind of make her opponents mentally check out a lot of the times. So that's why like Priscila Cachoeira in an underdog position is an excellent play. But this is the same fighter who got subbed against Jillian Robertson and was resulting to eye gouging to get out of it. And then a submission defeat to Valentina Shevchenko. But I'm still going to pick Karine Silva just because I do think she is the more polished MMA fighter at the moment. But be careful with this. Like, I could see slate breaking potential for both of them. Karine Silva can pick up a quick submission finish or a decision en route to tons of takedowns. But I really think that there is development looming here around Priscila Cachoeira. So it's not going to be a flag plant for me. It'll be some split exposure either side. But as far as pick, I'm going to go with Karine Silva still.
Yeah, I just feel like for me, Cachoeira might make a roster construction very easy when I'm hand building some lines, especially on that cash aspect. In our opening fight of the night, got Dana taking on Brady Hiestand. Dana at minus 150 betting favorite, plus 125 for Hiestand, 8,700 for Dana on DK, 7,500 for Brady. Pete, what's your thoughts?
I hope I'm not wrong with this, but like I feel like this is. I was expecting a much higher salary for Dana Bakary against Brady Hiestand, and Brady Hiestand's a fighter that I really like. I really like him, and I like his grappling potential. I like his takedown potential. He's like the little engine that could, and that was on full display against Ricky Tercios, where he went 6 of 11 in the takedown department. So tons of takedowns, excellent work rate, slight breaking potential. But like he's green on the feet a little bit, and I think that he can be hit, make some mistakes, and I think defensively, it's a dangerous fight to be going up there against Dana Bakary. This is the same fighter who made quick work of Guido Canetti, Kevin Natividad, Brandon Davis, even had Chris Gutierrez on skates and hurt. But like the grappling skills of Dana Bakary haven't been up to par, and that's why this is an interesting matchup. And Brady has clear takedown city potential and could break the slate here. But I think the most likely scenario for Dana Bakary is that training at Fight Ready, one of the best, wrestling camps in the game today, if not the best, they will prepare you and get you ready for a matchup like this. I think that Dana Bakary knocks out Brady Hiestand. And I think it happens pretty early. So Dana can grapple. It's not like Dana's horrible. It's just like it's not his game. He can grapple enough. He can offensively grapple. He landed a takedown against Chris Gutierrez. But like I want to see him defend more takedowns than he has. So I'm picking Dana Bakary, but this is opening matchup. I think is going to be optimal, man. And I think Dana Bakary is going to pick up a knockout.
And don't forget, along with that wrestling that they have there at Fight Ready, Eddie Cha, who's a striking coach, is an amazing, is an amazing striking coach. Let's get into our straight up fight picks here. Main event. Even though in GPPs, I'm going to go with Pavlovich. I'm going to get a good amount of him. I think Curtis Blaydes gets this one done.
Agree, Curtis Blaydes.
Man, the co-main event is I'm going to take Tavares, but man, don't feel good.
Okay, I'm going to go Bruno Silva. I'm just going to think that he rebounds.
I'll go Bobby Green.
I got to root for my boy. I got to do the Billy Quarantillo blind. I got to root for my boy Jared Gordon.
Let's just say the place I was at watching the fights, it got a little quiet when that knee landed.
Poor Billy Q.
Yeah, that was a cool, beautiful knee though. Beautiful knee.
It was.
So I mean, this. Sometimes you just got to, you just got to go. Damn, man, I got caught.
That's what Billy Q did. He appreciated it. He was like, they were talking after the fight. I thought that was so cool. So
Yeah. Give me Lucindo.
yeah, Lucindo.
I will go with my first underdog in Semelsberger.
Yeah, Semelsberger for me, underdog.
I'm going to go underdog number 2, Christos Giagos.
Same. Christos Giagos for me, another underdog. I think it's a close fight, though.
Yeah. I like Montel Jackson. Just hope he doesn't wrestle.
Yeah, I'm going to go Montel Jackson, but like I said, GPPs, I'm going Yahya like crazy.
Yeah. I will go Norma Dumont.
Norma Dumont?
Give me Junior Tafa.
Junior Tafa for
I
me
will
as
go
well.
Francis Marshall.
Francis Marshall.
Give me Priscila Cachoeira.
Okay, I don't hate it at all. I'm going Karine Silva.
And then I do like Dana in the opening fight.
Dana Bakary for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, I know Samuel mentioned his over-under number. Let me just see what that was. 6.5.
Let me see.
I mean, Samuel, I'll say I think it's a good number.
I'm gonna say under. I say we get 6.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, I'm looking at the fights to say high probability to go to. I think under is probably the right call there, but yeah. In terms of favorite core plays, cash GPP, GPPs, I think you got to look at the main event. You got to look at Tafa, Usman, and then I would say Wells Semelsberger would be in terms of GPPs. In cash, I think I'll get to Bobby Green as a core play in cash just because I feel pretty confident he gets it done. My only concern is, I'm going to need probably 2 fighters underneath 7,500 to make that work.
Yeah, I agree with your first 2 assessments, and that the main event is a priority for your core, and then I do agree that the Tafa Usman is a priority for your core as well. That's how I would set my groups as well. The third group is debatable. Like, you can lean one way or another, but I think that those first 2, you kind of hit the nail on the head.
Let's see here. Highest chances of fighters being optimal. I mean, look, I look at Curtis Blaydes, just because of what he could do with the wrestling aspect of that fight. I mean, he could rack up a ton of control time. We just know what he does on the ground. I mean, to me, he would be the one that would stick out to me, just labeling out a fighter. I don't know if there's another fighter you have that sticks out to you.
No, I think that's like pound for pound, he's probably the best fighter out there, price wise. Yeah. I think that's where I would lean, is 8,800. I've seen more out of him than a lot of these other fighters. Like, I wouldn't say that Dana Bakary, who's similar price tag to him, is a preferred play. I mean, he is 3-3 in the UFC, whereas Curtis Blaydes is 12-3-1. So much rather lean towards the elite.
In terms of like leverage plays and top darts, for me, the dart would be Yahya if he can somehow be able to work his submission. I mean, that to me is the one. He's clearly a leverage play. Lucindo, I think, is another leverage spot, but you got to pay up to get her. That would just, to me, it's getting her as a ownership play more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, if people aren't getting on Priscila Cachoeira, I like to double exposure on a lot of these underdogs that people don't get to, at least. And, I would agree with you as far as a high-priced fighter. Lucindo is flying under the radar as, a fighter nobody really wants to go against.
In terms of, to me, my favorite captain would be Curtis Blaydes, just because of what he can do with the grappling and racking up points. That one would stick out to me. Same type of thought as the MVP champion. Curtis Blaydes is probably the one that sticks out to me the most, just because of, the fantasy score upside of how he can just rack up points.
I would agree with you. Does the winner of this main event get the winner of Jones and Miocic? Interesting.
I would lean yes. Depending on when,
all timetable related.
Yeah, it's depending on when they can put this fight together. It sounds like the UFC wants to put this in MSG, which would be in November. So I would imagine that maybe the winner of this fight gets put on that card as essentially a backup option in case something were to happen. But I would definitely say if Blaydes gets to win, I think he's got to be right there. 3 best bets.
Good luck. I'm gonna go with gonna go with Francis Marshall as my 1. Dana Bakary as my 2. Where the hell do we go for 3? I don't want to put a minus 600 favorite in there. Oh God, do we go Semelsberger? I think we do. And that parlay of Francis Marshall, I don't really like that. I mean, Jeremiah Wells is so damn dangerous. And I was gonna do Lucindo at minus 350, but it is women's MMA. Francis Marshall minus 210, Dana Bakary minus 140, Semelsberger minus 105. Sit you with a parlay at plus 394. I think that's pretty solid.
Yeah, I was just I went kind of in the show. I was going to look at the belt. I still haven't found the Bellator 294 odds. But Arlene Blenko is one to look at there. I think with Sarah McMahon coming up in weight of how that can look there. You mentioned about Koji Horiguchi minus 250.
That's cheap in my opinion.
I mean, Rafael Stotts getting plus money, I think it is interesting. Plus 100. Just kind of scrolling down to see if something. Oh, okay. So the Bellator 294 is underneath the Bellator 295. That's what it is here.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah,
right?
Arlene Blenko plus 165 is probably an underdog to look at there. Not too much jumps off the table to me when I look at these Bellator odds.
Yeah, nothing crazy for me. I think the Elon Cruz sitting there at minus 105 against Bobby Green minus 115. I mean, like, we've heard a lot about Elon Cruz. I know that you're pretty familiar with him, but like, we haven't really seen it. Like Bobby King's been a guy that's been picking up some wins he shouldn't be picking up.
Yeah, it's a good fight there. Alon, Tampa guy. He recently signed with Bellator. When he got released by the UFC, he fought in Fury. I want to say he picked up 2 wins in Fury. I want to say 1 or 2. I know he had a fight that was supposed to happen that got canceled. I want to think like 2 days before the fight or something. Like he was in Texas for the fight. But yeah, that's obviously I'll have my blinders on for Alon Cruz.
Absolutely. I will tell you, right, as far as a bonus bet, risky bet, and I know you guys are asking about it, like, we had Pedro Munoz come through for us last week in a massive spot. Just saying, Yahya to win by submission is plus 900. To me, if he wins, that's his only path to victory.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, yeah, absolutely no doubt about it. But of course, we appreciate everyone tuning in for this episode of here on Fight HQ. Of course, I'll be back next week as next week is that is the now Ricky Simon and Song Yadong fight. And then of course the following week will be the UFC pay-per-view. Aljamain Sterling taking on Henry Cejudo. That's a fight that I'm actually interested. It's been kind of interesting to see. I'm not seeing a lot of love for Henry Cejudo. It's kind of I'm interested by that.
I'm going to be on the Henry Cejudo side, just so everybody knows.
I will be as well. But, of course, we appreciate everyone tuning in. As always, here on Fight HQ. Of course, if you're not subscribed to the channel, be sure to do that. Hit that thumbs up on the video, and we will talk to you next week right here on Fight HQ.